and our very best thoughts and concerns go to them. Steve, can you just pass that on our behalves? How are you, Steve? Okay, all right, now, councillors, we'll just start with apologies, and I have one apology only from Councillor Chris. Weddings in the family, I think. I'm sure they're all having a great time. I see there's a couple other people who are not here. I presume we're just sort of reflecting on them as lateness, possibly, something like that.
Coming in for the main show later.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll all be here. Ah, here we are. Yep, good. Right, well, I'll move the receipt of apology from Councillor Chris, Councillor Cameron, seconder. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Right. Declarations of interest, not aware of any of those. None of those, no declarations of interest. Confirmation of the minutes. I confirmed the ordinary meeting of the GB held on Thursday the 18th of December 2014. Including the confidential section as a true and correct record. Move that, Councillor Cal seconds. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
It's passed. 5 acknowledgements and achievements. Councillors, you have our list of many and varied achievements there through the week. I want to acknowledge, last night I was at the New Zealander of the Year Awards. The New Zealander of the Year is a great Aucklander and an unbelievable Kiwi, Sir Stephen Tyndall. Really great to see him receive that award, and Sir John Coohan was in there beside him also. There are a number of Aucklanders who received acknowledgements. Peter Beck, the Rocket Man, was given the Innovation Award of the Year, and man, oh man, is that deserved. That guy is about to start a satellite network and make New Zealand only the ninth country in the world to have the capability of sending satellites into space, in behind 8 other countries are all superpowers, and us. That man, I think, is going to rewrite his name in our books and beside Ernest Rutherford. He is unbelievable. Okay, now I have 4 acknowledgements this morning. First of all, councillors, I'd like to acknowledge Marianne Rapata, South Auckland stalwart. Marianne Tuwha Ni Rapata from the Makaurau Marae Mangere passed away on the 28th of January 2015. Marianne played a pivotal role in forging closer relationships between her iwi, Te Ahiwaru, Waiohua and Te Akitai, and the Auckland Council, particularly with the Mangere Otahu Local Board in Te Waka Amamoa. The wide-ranging involvement in council business has included, but is not limited to, Mana Whenua Kaitiaki, Watercare Kaitiaki Forum, Southern Initiative, Manukau Harbour Forum, Auckland Transport Representative, Unitary Plan Iwi Working Group, and input into the drafting of the local board plan. As the environmental spokesperson for her marae, she championed initiatives which contributed to the positive social, economic, cultural and environmental outcomes in her local area and beyond. She was also a long-time champion of the New Zealand Police as Iwi Liaison Officer for counties Manukau. Our thoughts are with her whānau, including her husband Henry, daughters Tuini and Tasha, and I represented our interests at her tangi. Can you please all stand in acknowledgement to Marianne? Thank you all. I next want to acknowledge Doug Armstrong. You will all know Doug, in particular either as a TV reporter and presenter, and for us in this sector as the former Rodney District Council Mayor. Doug died on Wednesday the 18th of February, aged 83. He was elected as Mayor of Rodney District in 1992, replacing the late Sir Gordon Mason, who had held the mayoralty since 1972. He resigned from local government in 2000. Doug was a regular face on New Zealand television in the 1980s, working as a sports broadcaster alongside the late Philip Leishman and Peter Williams as part of the One World of Sport team that covered the All Blacks' triumphant Webb Ellis Cup win at the first ever Rugby World Cup in 1987. Doug is survived by his wife Alison, 3 children and their families. Would you please stand as a sign of acknowledgement for Doug? Thank you all. I want to lastly acknowledge 2 people whose passing, one a kuia of our community and in particular mother of one of our Independent Māori Statutory Board members, and secondly one of New Zealand's most preeminent architects. I first of all want to acknowledge Alan Wilson ni Kaihau. Alan Wilson, affiliated with Akitai Waiohua and Ngāti Tiata, passed away on the 1st of February 2015. Grandmother of 6 children and mother of 9, amongst them Karen Wilson, a mana whenua representative on the Independent Māori Statutory Board. You will recall at our meeting with the Independent Māori Statutory Board, we acknowledged to Karen her loss, and we want to recognise on this occasion one of our family and the loss of their whānau. So we have sent the very best wishes, and Alf was present at Alan's tangi. And secondly, I want to acknowledge the passing of a great New Zealander, Sir Ian Athfield. Synonymous with Wellington, Sir Ian Athfield was one of New Zealand's architectural giants. One of his last projects was Auckland's newest public library, the Devonport Library, which will formally open today. And so on Ian's passing on the January the 16th, we lost one of the greatest ever of our architects. So I'd like to ask you to stand to both Sir Ian and Alan. Thank you very much, councillors. Yes, I know. I was just looking for some notes.
Oh,
actually.
thank you.
Chris. Lucy? I need notes.
Maybe I could,
Yeah.
if you don't have them before you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, actually, councillors, Councillor Chris Darby had indicated a request for me to make just acknowledgement of a special person in his ward and a matter. Unfortunately, I actually don't have the notes that I thought I would have. So, Chris, can you do that for me, please?
I'd just like to briefly acknowledge 2 of my constituents. One being Lucy Knight. The name may not be that memorable. The news media is of last year, where she went to the aid of an elderly Chinese woman in the Northcote shopping centre, and she stood up to that thuggery, and she went to assist this quite elderly and fragile woman, and came off second best. And I think you know the story now because I've reminded you. Her road to recovery was quite tenuous. But she has recovered to a certain extent. And on Saturday, we had the Northcote Chinese and Korean celebrations. Jonathan Coleman, Minister, was there, and other elected members from Auckland Council. And there was a special award given to Lucy Knight for her real show of community bravery and the signal to the community that you can stand up to thugs and muggers in your town centres, and to not hide bullying in any way. And I think that message was really powerful. So I just want to have this council acknowledge her. It's the first time she's been back to her shopping centre since the assault. It was quite memorable. It was very, very touching. So to Lucy Knight, I acknowledge. And the second person is another bloke from the North Shore, and you've spoken of him in the introduction, Mayor Len, but I would like to maybe just dwell on Sir Stephen Tyndall a little longer. Steve Tyndall is an absolutely remarkable Aucklander, New Zealander shore bloke. He's been around the traps for a long time in business, but for all that time he's had a huge social heart. It's always been with him, and it's been always showing. And last night, of course, he was given the Kiwi Bank New Zealander of the Year award. And Chief Judge Cameron Bennett said some lovely things about him, and I think they are now in print. But he talked about him being an absolute passionate New Zealander. And that's often said, but this is a deep-seated passion of Stephen's. And it's not just for business. Yep, he founded the warehouse and won good on that, but he also developed the Tyndall Foundation. The Tyndall Foundation's put some $100 million back into our community, and a lot of that money into Auckland. He's also put $250 million into seed capital for a number of very smart startups. He's an amazing guy, and of course, Mayor Len, he's well behind the Youth Connections program, very, very active there, and at your side just recently, I believe.
Yep.
So he's a sailing fan, he's a Team New Zealand addict, he's a Takapuna cheerleader, and he's a champion of our city. He always is challenging us differently, of course, and the latest challenge, of course, is in our emails this morning at 7:20, and on page 2 of the Herald today regarding the port. So I'd like to acknowledge Sir Stephen and Lucy Knight.
Thank you.
Mr. Tyndall's still alive?
Yeah, okay, thank you. It's going to be a long day.
Goodness gracious
and there was a liberty there.
Some of us can tell you the other
But
side.
thank you. Well done, Councillor Chris. Councillors, I'm the end of acknowledgements. Right, now we'll move on next, please, to petitions.
Point of order. Point of
Not
order.
aware of any petitions.
Point of order.
Who's point of order of me?
Point of order. Well, point of clarification.
Yes.
I wonder if, in future, given that Councillor Darby has taken the liberty to acknowledge some very worthy people within his ward, and I think that's something that's commendable. Yep. And I think it should be done. So I wonder, Mr. Mayor, in future, if you would give us the liberty of also acknowledging people within our communities who do good work. There's good work being done in our community every day. So I would like to take the opportunity in future also of acknowledging people in my community, particularly one recently, Barbara Kendall, who's made a major...
Stop. That's it.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
absolutely.
I got the point of
Ellison
clarification.
Road.
We won't need to worry about doing that anymore. Take note.
You don't need to.
Okay, thank you. Right, public input. So there's no petitions. Public input. We have public input from, in the first instance, Graham East. We have secondary public input from Gaze Properties. That will be in our confidential sector. So Graham, welcome. Graham, you know that you've got 5 minutes. So I'm going to be very close on the 5 minutes. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you on the matter of resolving suburban level crossings. Very good.
Thank you for hearing me this morning. People might be wondering why I didn't go to a committee. I was booked in to speak to the Infrastructure Committee. Their meeting was cancelled, so I'm here to speak to you. The reason I wanted to speak this month is that it marks, if you turn to the second page, what do we do here? Click. Yeah, 4 weeks ago today, there was a fatal accident on the Morningside Drive level crossing, which received quite a bit of publicity and then disappeared like yesterday's news. 2 years ago yesterday, there was the very famous accident with the wheelchair. And again, that one's disappeared from the news. That woman is still requiring round-the-clock care, costing you and me $200,000 a year. She will never get her life back. She was independent, she was confident, she had a job, she had a little flat, and she really liked the Morningside station. Anyway, I won't dwell on that, but it raises or concentrates the mind a little bit on the issue that we still have 31 level crossings. We've known this for a decade, and what have we done about it? Not a lot. Okay, since the accident, Kiwi Rail, to their credit, have spent considerable time and energy on checking all of those crossings and making upgrades, but the point is they remain dangerous because they are still level crossings. And as I say on the next page, I'm getting a bit behind myself here, as long as people and trains come together in the same place, there is the risk of an accident. And another factor, which is perhaps not discussed so much, but I think we're all aware of, is the disruption and delays to traffic, including public transport, by the level crossings. And this chart, maybe not so easy to read there, but you've all got hard copy handouts. It is part of a larger analysis of all the crossings. The original version of this, which I saw, had 4 columns, so it was present day, 2016 when all the electric trains get going, 2021 or thereabouts when we improve the frequencies yet again, and then a bit of speculation as to what it might be like mid-century when we've got trains every few minutes. And what it's showing is that a lot of these crossings, the barrier arms are going to be down for at least a quarter of the time, and in some cases more. Sarawea Street at the bottom is a very special case, the busiest level crossing in the country, because it's on that short piece of line between Newmarket and Britomart. And that one is already being taken care of at some length. There's a plan, it's been through the Environment Court, it's held up in legal challenges, but it will happen. That's actually one of the cheap ones, and it will happen. My question is, what are we doing about the other 30? Sorry, I'm slightly out of order here. There is a report which was done. One of the authors is actually in the room. And that report, I had a hand in. I helped with the brief of what they were going to do, and I was invited into several sessions as work was done on the report. But when the report was completed, approximately a year ago, I have been struggling ever since to see it, and I've been told it's sensitive and I can't see it. The AT board was briefed on it in about April last year, and this is a slide from that. And it does include an interesting comment at the bottom there. So the guts of the slide is a list of the, out of the 31, there's about a third considered higher priority, the ones in bold. I think there's 8 or 9, whatever. But the comment at the bottom, it is only a recommendation coming from the staff, that we need to do what we can to remove these high priority crossings over the next 10 years. Now, there are a few crossings we could simply eliminate, close, delete. That's cheap. But the bulk of them you can't close, because of course for every crossing you close, you put more pressure on the ones that remain. And people do need to get from one side of the tracks to the other without some tortuous deviation halfway across town. So, moving on. So what are we doing about the problem? I've alluded to the report. I refused to do an OAA request, but I was told some weeks ago that my request, which I actually lodged the day before the fatal accident, that was coincidental, that was being treated as an OAA, and that I would have the report by the 26th day of March, which is today. I still don't have it. February.
Next month.
February.
So all I've got is this.
Graham, I've got to tell you, you're at 5 now.
Okay, so I'll click to the last slide.
Good man.
What I'm asking you guys to do, you are not Auckland Transport, but you guys write the cheques. So basically what we've got is, we've got an RLTP. If you turn to page 108, line 47 of the great big chart at the back, you'll see railway level crossings. It includes $250 million. That looks good. But if you read the fine print, it's in the right-hand columns, which are unfunded. So, in fact, there is $0 available to do anything. And what I want to see is that broken up so that rather than say it's all or nothing, we either spend $250 million or we spend nothing. Can we at least commit to doing some of the crossings to make a start? And this is what, although I'm appearing here today as an individual, my local board put a resolution forward 5 years ago asking for exactly that, a program of work to progressively eliminate our level crossings. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Glenn Graham, good man. Are there any questions of Graham? Councillor Dick and then Councillor Wayne.
Yeah, thank you, Graham, and for sharing those concerns with us. I'm particularly familiar with some of these crossings, and in your estimation, how much worse will the traffic congestion get around the Woodward Road area as the frequency increases and the barrier arms will be down for almost, well, in fact, 15 minutes every hour?
Well, I think the thing is not just the current situation, but the fact that we have ambitions of doubling the patronage on the system, and the way to do that is to double the number of trains. So that means that instead of being down for 15 minutes every hour, we're looking at 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes, at which point it becomes intolerable. And there are other level crossings, for example, Walters Road and Manaroa Road in Papakura, which Callum know all about, and some that aren't even mentioned on this list, like Church Street in Penrose. So there are a number of crossings which carry significant volumes of traffic that will get substantially gummed up. It's possible in the peak that the traffic won't get through before the barrier arm comes down again. So then you get a compounding thing. And during the rush hour, you could get gridlock in the affected suburbs. I don't know. But Melbourne and many other cities have faced the same issue. Melbourne put $440 million into their crossings precisely because of the gridlock issue, although there was the emotive and the actual issue of injury and death. The thing that drove it in the end was dealing with traffic congestion.
So just following up on that, so as the congestion increases, do you believe that it adds to the danger as people become more frustrated waiting and
Indeed, that the two are actually connected, because what will happen is the guy at the head of the queue will say, well, I was stuffed up and I had to wait 10 minutes or whatever here yesterday. I've got an opportunity, I think, to beat the barrier arm. Oh dear, I've miscalculated, here comes the train. So I can foresee how, I mean, it's speculation, but yes, I do think that the two are connected.
Very good. And then I had Councillor Wayne.
Hi, Graham. Just around getting this report, you have asked for it. Has there been any reason given for withholding?
Yes, the very obvious one, that making these structures, they'll be quite large and they will involve land take, because even though you can work within the road reserve, in many cases they will affect access to adjacent properties. So you will need to take land, possibly, you know, take someone's business away from them, etc., etc. And because there are alternatives, they don't want to be discussing way ahead of time in detail which sites might. So I get all that, and I cannot see why that can't be stuck into a schedule at the back of the report and the guts of the report. And I don't know how many pages that might be out of 94, but 30, 40 pages of more general discussion. And I hadn't a clue on the funding. There's $228 million in the long-term plan. I do not know what that will buy. I can only speculate that the average cost is 25 to 30 million, so that will buy you 8 or 9 crossings.
And the related question, you've produced this impact of train frequencies. Obviously there's a cost associated with that in terms of delays, not only to the trains and the trains network in AT, but to the passengers, of course, who are effectively losing time by not having a faster trip.
No. The trains are not delayed. It's the cars that are delayed. When the trains are delayed is when there's an accident and there's no services on that line for 3 hours while the cops go around photographing and measuring everything, and people are having to take alternative means of getting home. I mean, this is what happened 4 weeks ago. So there were no trains on the Western Line for 4 hours, or 3 to 4 hours. Yeah, so the delay every day when the system is working properly is to people using the road. The delay to the trains only occurs when there's an accident, which, touch wood, will not be very frequent.
So certainly delays.
But
to
they do
local-
happen.
Okay,
Delays
stop.
overall.
It's questions, not debate. Graham, are there any other questions? Graham, thank you. Certainly a very strong advocate in this issue. Keep up good work. Right, I will move that Graham's report to us be received.
Second.
Second, Councillor Cathy. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against passed. Thank you.
Yeah, but
Yep. Now, move next to local board input. No local board input. Extraordinary business. No extraordinary business. Notices of motion. Yeah, no notices of
Mr. Chair, I had an item of extraordinary business.
I did too.
motion.
And,
There was a request that came through, and I ruled it out.
well, yeah, you may have ruled it out, Your Worship, but I just want to make an application then, or a request to you. I would have thought that, you're saying that it's going to be said it's going to the CCO review committee.
Yep.
But that committee is only a committee of the, it's not a committee of the whole. It's only it's a smaller committee, doesn't cover the whole, which doesn't cover the whole of the council. I think this matter is of high public importance, and I would have thought that it is a matter that also, it's very pressing at the moment, because even the New Zealand Herald has written an editorial this morning.
Point of order, can we just get an explanation as to what it is?
Yeah. Order, please.
It is the matter of ATEED putting an officer or having a
Yeah,
contract.
stop.
So
Hang on,
Doing
stop,
what we told
stop.
them to do.
Stop, please.
Following an SOI.
Order, please.
all I'm going to
Order. No, I'm telling you to stop. Now, when someone's speaking, and one, you want to call a spurious point of order about their speaking because you don't like that they're speaking, or second, you don't like what they're saying, it's not a point of order. That's the first point. Secondly, you show respect. Now, I gave Councillor Wood the opportunity of just querying a point that has been raised, and so I'll give a little bit of context and background to it. Obviously, there is a lot of media noise at this point in time, which I don't think should necessarily determine what we do around this chamber. But as an aside, there's a bit of media noise at this point in time about overseas appointments.
Public noise.
And order, please. And so a request was made that this matter come before this body for an urgent discussion today. And I said no. And there's very good reason why I should say no to that. One, we do not do knee-jerkism on issues like this. Secondly, we at the very least owe our CCOs, and where there are employment relationships, and you know the sensitivity of employment relationships, when those are involved, whatever your view on them is, you get the right advice and give the employer, which in this instance is 2 or 3 of our CCOs, the opportunity to have their say and to properly inform us, not drag them in front of us. So, what I've suggested to them, Councillor George and Councillor Cathy, both of you who raised this point with me, is that the right way of doing this, for a start, at lunchtime today, the chair and the CEO will come and give us a view. It will be reported in proper process and in the proper way into one of our committees for consideration and respect for the views that they have, to hear what they've got to say, and we'll do that with as much pace as we can muster. And I think that that is absolutely the best way, and therefore I'm not going to take any further debate or discussion on it. We've got so much to do today, and we're going to move on. So there are no notices of motion. Sorry.
Order? No, it's a point of order.
Point
I
of
just
order.
wonder, I just wonder, Mr Mayor, then if you would clarify for my benefit then 3.75 to do with extraordinary business, and perhaps I might be reading this wrong, an item that is not on the agenda for a meeting may be dealt with at the meeting if, and there's a sequential development here of A and B, if the governing body or committee by resolution so decides. So I just seek an explanation
I
as
have
to...
a chair's discretion to rule on any request for extraordinary items.
Yeah. So that seems to be in conflict somewhat with the ability of the governing body to resolve the matter in this instance. I mean, which standing order stands then?
Chair's discretion.
Chair's discretion.
Well, I would have thought the governing body,
Chair's
as some
discretion.
say, resolution.
Look, that's why you have the chair.
Well,
And there is a clear line through our rules and standing orders that provide for me as the chair in this instance to actually make a ruling around extraordinary
so
business.
some standing orders are higher than other standing orders,
Yep,
are they?
absolutely.
Well, I don't see that in writing, Mr Mayor.
Well, I'm very happy to provide it to you post this meeting. Right, notices of motion. There's no notice of motion.
Mr Mayor, just point of clarification. So are you saying that the course of action here is that AT are going to be held to account over lunch? Is that the public forum? In our private lunch, informal lunch? Is that where this is going to be discussed?
Yeah, for a start, it'll be discussed at lunchtime. So, look, and that's as reasonably good a start as you could possibly have. So, look, I'm not going to take any further discussion on it. We'll have...
You just shout out and get heard, is that how you do it?
Yeah, Councillor Cathy, don't shout out.
I've got my hand up.
And what is the point?
I object to the words that you used. Knee-jerkism.
Yep.
I believe I'm doing my job as a councillor.
Yeah, okay, look,
And
that's
due
my view.
process
Yep.
says that I can bring important issues here to the governing body.
Yep.
I just want to support George. There was no collusion here. We both did it independently. But this is an issue of real concern to me as a councillor. And the process is used by ATEED to make these appointments. Now, you've been briefed, and you've also put out a press release within 24 hours of this scandal breaking.
Oh, look, stop.
If
No,
there was
we're not gonna- no,
knee-jerkism,
no,
that was the
no, look,
knee-jerkism.
Sorry, we're not going to have any debate about it. That will be for a future time when we are appropriately briefed, all of us together, and when we are able to deal with this matter in a measured way. Right, so I've got no notices of motion, and we move on now to item 11. And this is the report of the hearings panel on the proposed Auckland Council Trading and Events in Public Places Bylaw 2015. A lot of recommendations here. Right, we've got Hildegard. Welcome. Are you at the end of all your work yet?
Close to.
Eh?
We're close
Righty.
to.
What a job. Doing a great job, mate. Really appreciate this. And I understand, Councillor Denise, you're the chair? Okay, Hildegard, is there anything you want to add to what we've got here? And then perhaps we ask Councillor Denise for her various views?
No, I have nothing to add.
Oh, that was a good report. Councillor Denise.
I thought, thank you, Your Worship, I thought that I would start with just recapping what the Trading and Events and Public Places bylaw was entitled or set out to do. It was ensuring appropriate and effective regulation of trading activities and events, including where necessary, approval, ensuring that there is safe access for pedestrians and other users of public places, ensuring there is equitable balance in the allocation of space for appropriate trading activities, and encouraging a diversity of trading activities, events and filming. So we embarked on a very robust and worthwhile process. I'd like to thank my fellow panel members. It was a joint bylaw process with both us and Auckland Transport, and sitting on the panel was Councillor Webster, Councillor Penrose, Councillor Casey, IMSB member Glenn Wilcox and Ruben Ravindran from Auckland Transport. So I'd like to thank those panellists. We went through 3 days of public hearings and it was a very good process. And of course we're very ably aided by our fantastic staff three of whom are sitting here before you, and once I'm finished, can answer any of the technical questions. I'd like to thank them for the report that you see in your agenda today, councillors. That report is very fulsome, including showing tracked changes or marked up changes from the original proposed bylaw to what we're seeking your recommendation for today. I would like to point out two items that may be of interest to the governing body. One was that we traversed the topic of defining shared spaces. That was something that was highlighted to us during the process, that we hadn't in fact included that. And we needed to. So you'll see that reference in the proposed bylaw that we're recommending for you to adopt today. The other, which was of great interest and very much demonstrated in the number of submissions, was the idea of including and adopting smoke-free policy in outdoor spaces. We were unable to include that in this particular bylaw because there just wasn't the scope for it, and instead, as a panel, we're recommending to you, and if you'd look on your recommendations in item G, we're asking for staff to commence the review of the smoke-free policy, which would be, in ordinary circumstances, commencing in 2016, to bring it forward to 2015, to acknowledge the fact that primarily the Cancer Society, but other groups as well, had organised a very voluminous array of submissions calling for outdoor dining to become smoke-free here in Auckland. We were very happy as a panel to bring this particular recommendation forward to you for consideration today, that being that we bring forward the review of the smoke-free policy to this year, whereas ordinarily it would be next year. So thank you for, again, to the panellists, to the staff, for a great process, and I have no qualms whatsoever in recommending that we receive and adopt the recommendations of the hearing panel today.
Very good. Councillor Denise. Now, I think I saw something floating around from Councillor George.
Yeah, I've got to remember. I just want to ask Helga a couple of questions, if I can.
Have you actually discussed that amendment with the chair of that subcommittee?
No.
I haven't discussed the amendment with the chair. I've discussed it with Helga, though.
Oh, that's good.
So I'll start. I just want to, I just want to get his views on two issues, Your Worship.
And on the basis that he gives you a reasonable answer, we're still going to have the amendment?
Well, we will have the amendment, yeah.
All right.
So I just want to know from Helgard, firstly, maybe three questions. What is the cost to council to take in a prosecution for offences other than litter offences under this trading and events in public places bylaw? What's the average cost?
We would have to institute prosecution within a district court, and that would normally cost us anything from 4,000 upwards. It could take us up to 5,000 or 6,000.
So that's someone down in Queen Street that commits a breach, $4,000 to $6,000. And what's the fine?
Normally the fines are fairly, we don't recover the cost at all.
So what would be the fine though, roughly?
Depends on the particular breach, but it could be as low as $500.
Yeah, and it could be community service or some other non-monetary fine.
Yeah, particularly in this type of breach, probably not, but it would be nominal. It would not be seen as a serious offence.
Okay, that's my first question. My second question is just in relation to mobile shops, number 16 in the bylaw. I've kind of taken an interest in these mobile shops in certain areas of Auckland, becoming more prevalent, it seems. How many? Do we know how many there are operating, and are they all licensed?
I do not know, but I don't know whether Adrian, you know.
For Chair, there's various areas have more mobile traders than others, but there's approximately about 500 operating throughout the whole of the Auckland region.
Okay, and you check them regularly to see that they're licensed?
We check them regularly, and we do enforcement in relation to illegal trading that's reported to us.
Okay, and the third question, Parliament had the audacity yesterday to kick the Manukau street prostitution bill out. It's gone. And the chairman, Scott Simpson, indicated, I see, that councils have got adequate provisions under their bylaws to deal with that situation. Is this under this bylaw here?
Now, Councillor, there are a number of clauses in various bylaws, amongst others the Public Safety and Nuisance bylaw that deals with antisocial behaviour. There isn't an explicit reference to any bylaw to prostitution, largely because it's a legal activity. But antisocial behaviour, littering, and those types of things are dealt with in various pieces of legislation, amongst others the Litter Act, the Public Safety and Nuisance bylaw, and we would have to look at whether those would be suitable measures to enforce.
So that's something which we'll look at in the future, seeing that Parliament have not going to take that one, yes, local government act or a bill any further.
Indeed, a fair amount of work had been done in preparation of the anticipated legislation, and we would work further on that foundation to see which measures we may or may not have to put forward.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I want to move that amendment on the basis of what Mr. Wagner has just said.
Okay, so what Councillor George is wanting to add is that Auckland Council make a fresh approach to Local Government New Zealand and the Minister of Local Government, seeking the implementation of an infringement fee process for bylaw offences. Okay, now, I actually, Councillor George, this is your proposal, so can you just give us a little bit of a view around what it is you're trying to achieve there?
Well, what I'm trying to achieve is, I'm trying to achieve a process whereby Auckland Council officers can issue infringement notices for people that breach this bylaw, but probably other bylaws as well, to issue a monetary penalty, and in place of the laborious, long-winded process of having to go to the district court, lay a charge or an information, and then have our prosecutors go there, prosecute the matter. This changes the direction that we would take. We would issue the infringement notice, obviously, instantly. It's an instant fine. And if the person decides to defend the matter, they can take the matter to the district court and deal with it that way. So Mr. Wagner says that it's $4,000 to $6,000 of the cost that we have to spend to take the matter to court. But on the other hand, the monetary penalties very much only in the hundreds of dollars. So that's the reason. This is a matter that we've taken up. I remember when Councillor Des Morrison was here last term, we made that approach to Local Government New Zealand, I think, to get them to give us some help, and to the Minister of Local Government, and I think they actually said we'll work on it, and I think that process is still underway. So I want to really get the support of this council to reinforce that we wish to pursue this initiative.
Councillor George, the first thing Des would have done would be come to me and talk to me about what was proposed, because this is actually quite a significant suggestion.
It's different to this bylaw.
And look, it is my way of reading it. It's a very significant suggestion, and as you know, myself and Councillor Penny W sit on Local Government New Zealand Council. We've actually got a meeting coming up, I think, in about a week's time. And a better course of action on the basis that we'd really need Local Government New Zealand to probably go with us before we even approach the government, and before we even get a formal view from Helgard, which would be really nice to get before we even put a recommendation, would be to actually get a general view of the table at Local Government New Zealand. I suspect that they might be reasonably supportive, but this is potentially a significant change, and the better way to go, I'd encourage you, Councillor George, would be to just request myself and Councillor Penny, when we attend this National Government meeting, bring this up as a matter of general business, and get a view from around the table and from Lawrence in particular as Pres. And then on the basis that it's go and we get a bit of background work from Helgard and his team, that we then bring it back in a shaped up form as a way to really move. Councillor George, I'd really encourage that. We're sort of a bit sort of cart before the horse here.
Well, okay, I don't think that's the case, but you know, if that's what you think. You pursue it and
yeah, absolutely. Look, I'd be delighted to. I can actually see, totally see where you're going to. Have a lot of support for it, but I think that we need to arrive at a point where we could get it back in here as an agreed position with all the right support and information beside it, and with local government New Zealand saying, yeah, okay, like Auckland's lead, and this is the sort of work that we can do to support it. So, that would be a better way to go, my suggestion, Councillor George. So I'd be really happy to take that up on your behalf with Councillor Penny.
Okay, and I'll be happy if Helgard can give us some update on the street prostitution issue in the near future.
Yeah, look,
it is important because there's people in South Auckland in those Hunters Corner and Manurewa who have been let down, I think, by Parliament, just not pursuing the matter any further.
Well, you're absolutely right there, Councillor George. I was aware that this was floating around back into Parliament, though I wasn't aware it was coming up yesterday, and aware that they were constantly being advised that we actually have powers, and our local and our officers saying, no, we do not, and we need a legislative change, and that's why we pursued it for 7 or 8 years. And Councillor Dick, Councillor I, Councillor Alf, Councillor John, where it actually started, Manukau, we were told a consistent line of advice for 7 years. You do not have the power. You've got to go to Parliament. Yep. And that's the reason why we as a governing body went there. So anyhow, obviously the Crown Law Office won. So now we need to reflect on where to from here. So you're right on that frame too, Councillor George. Now, Councillor Cowan.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Helgard, question to you. We're in the early stages of the new Public Nuisance and Safety Bylaw that we didn't have in the first term of the new Auckland Council, and we've rolled that across the region. And whilst we have a little concern of maybe tightening some of the areas of the Public Nuisance and Safety Bylaw, there's still a wee bit of an avenue here that we can use that particular tool for some of these particular issues that we have across the region. Would that be correct?
That would be correct, yes. It does not make specific reference to nuisance caused by street prostitution, but it does have a provision around antisocial behaviour that probably cover it.
Right. So as we've talked in the past, though, we're going to review that and look at that process going forward in the future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to support, I think the motion is about to be moved by Councillor Crum, just speaking in support of that, and I'd like to just note one particular section, and that's G. And I'd commend those that sat round the table considering that particular matter of bringing forward the review of that policy. Though I would like to remind councillors, I think we were all told, and this is not to criticise the motion in any way, but we were previously told that I thought it was after 18 months of that policy being in place. It was either 12 or 18 months. And so I'm a little bit surprised to see that the panel's been told it was in 16. And I raised this recently informally and in one of our shared sessions on the Thursday afternoon. And there was quite strong agreement around the table that we did need to review this policy as soon as that 12 or 18 months rolled over, and we're now past that point. That's my understanding. But I can't see that on the work stream, the forward work stream. So I would hope that the Chief Executive, once this has gone through today, sees to having this matter come up in the work stream earlier rather than later. There's considerable public interest in this policy. I think in retrospect it shouldn't have been a weak policy, it should have been a bylaw, and maybe that's something for us to consider as we review it as well. So I'd hope that's all in the mix. But I think anybody who walks our town centres or Queen Street, which is pretty much Butt Valley, in the afternoons at around lunch times when people exit their places of work and retail knows that we've got quite a big issue with shared smoke amongst our community. So great to see that recommendation come through, acknowledge that particular part of the panel's work.
Very good. Any other comments? Councillor Denise.
Well, perhaps we should invite Helgard to clarify the timeline review.
Councillor, I think I should perhaps defer to my manager on this because he was responsible for the original policy.
Very good.
Thank you, Mike Sinclair. I'm the Manager of Social Policy and Bylaws, and as referred to, was responsible in my previous role for overseeing the development of the smoke-free policy. So the smoke-free policy had worked within it 3 phases of implementation. The third phase was to come into effect in 2018, and in anticipation of that third phase coming into effect, there was a scheduled review of the entire policy in 2015 to determine whether or not 2016, sorry, to determine whether or not a bylaw approach would be appropriate as part of the introduction of that third phase. It was always the intention of the policy that that review would take place in 2016, and it has been factored into the internal work programs for the social policy and bylaws team towards that end.
Very good. Anything else, councillors? Denise? Thank you. Helgard, keep up good work. The councillors will report back to you on the matter that Councillor George raised at a subsequent early meeting. Well done. Move that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against, passed. We had a seconder who was
I'll second it.
Councillor Penny W. Very good. Councillor Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
Right, councillors, move on to item 12. Item 12 is a report, Auckland Regional Amenity Facility Funding Model Review. We've got terms of reference. This report is a consequence of the matter that we dealt with last year, where we were asked to report back on terms of references for the review. The terms of reference, as agreed, reasonably general, and then report back in August with any suggested recommendations in terms of the Auckland Regional Amenities funding model, and then any recommendations to move on those. If not, then the matter will proceed as per it is. So, we've got Alistair.
Good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors. The report in front of you seeks endorsement of the terms of reference to the proposed review of the AREFA regime. The purpose of the review is set out in the terms of reference is to identify any issues associated with the current funding model, consider options to address the issues that are identified, and consider whether the Act remains fit for purpose, particularly given some issues that have arisen during the operation of the Act and Auckland Council's new legislative context. As the Mayor has indicated, we'll, at the end of the review, proposing to provide advice to the governing body on recommended changes, if any, to the funding system to enhance its effectiveness. I should note that the proposed terms of reference have been prepared with input from both the funding board and the amenities themselves. In fact, I have David Holdsworth representing the amenities board with me today, if you have any questions of him. Vern Walsh, the chair of the funding board, sends his apologies. He would have liked to have been here, but he had some commitments that he unfortunately couldn't get out of, although he has indicated the funding board's view on the matter, and they're generally neutral towards a review, but have some views that are incorporated within the terms of reference. The terms of reference sets out at pages, I think it's 101 to 103 of your agenda, the issues that the respective parties would like to see considered through the review. So those issues have been identified from a council perspective, from the amenities perspective, and from the funding board's perspective. Now, There are a couple of pages of them there, so I won't run through them all, although I am happy to take questions on the issues that have been identified in particular and the terms of reference in general.
Very good. Thank you, Alistair. Councillors, any questions or comments?
Yes.
Councillor Penny W.
Well, Mr Mayor, considering that the Auckland Regional Amenities actually report to the Finance and Performance Committee, I'm surprised that the Chair and Deputy Chair sort of aren't involved with meeting with this anyway. I would have thought that, I mean, I get
Councillor
told
Penny, I was anticipating that you would raise this.
Were you?
Yes, and I was going to suggest that the appropriate second recommendation here should be to include yourselves as a part of the working team going forward between now and August.
So I'm just wondering, how is that going to be dealt with when it's already been indicated that the Helicopter Trust will be coming back again this year? We can't give them operational funding.
No.
This is one-off. Are we going to give them a two-off?
Councillor Linda, they just
More off?
to answer, no, just to answer the question. They will be coming as they're entitled to, as any of the other 9 are entitled to.
Yes.
And come here, and they've done that previously, for a request for a capital grant, and so we won't consider that here today. On the basis that in fact is there for a decision in the LTP, we'll all sit around the table and make that decision.
So, Mr Chairman, is this incorrect and shouldn't be in here then? Is it that statement one-off capital grant? Or is that at the time we all thought it was a one-off, so that's been put in there?
And no, that was the decision at that time, and no doubt that will impact on your various views if a further application comes through, which I haven't seen as yet. Councillor King.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. All amenities support the continuation of the Act. Are they supportive of this process overall and the potential of change, or are you hearing amongst the 10 amenities that status quo and the relationship that we have with them and the application processes is overall working pretty well, or is there agitation for change?
I probably shouldn't presume to speak on behalf of the amenities, and I do have David Holdsworth here with me. I would mention that in the issues that are identified in the back of the terms of reference, I think the amenities have indicated that they value the arm's length nature of the current funding arrangement, so they've articulated that view to us, but perhaps I should hand over to David to answer that question.
Thank you. All of the amenities are supportive of the process, which, and this terms of reference was drafted with input from all of the amenities, so all 10 support the process. It'd be a bit presumptuous to say what the outcome will be, so to say that that there is a mood for change is not correct. I think the mood among most of the amenities is to support the current structure because it works well. The old saying, if something's working, don't change it, and it seems to be working well from our point of view. However, we are happy and supportive of a process to review that, and that's where we are at the moment.
Some of the amenities have raised concerns, haven't they, in the past, that they want to retain this direct relationship with the governing body, and governing body members want to retain that accountability and transparency to them. Will this review take a look at the possibility of perhaps a independent board assessing and recommending the applications, but that independent board perhaps might not recommend directly to the governing body, but they may report more so to a CCO. I'm thinking the likes of RFA. Is that something that you'll be looking at as to the reporting lines of the funding process?
It is something that we could consider, although I would point out that in the issues that we've identified from a council perspective to be considered through the review, that we're looking for a mechanism that involves clear political accountability for decision making. So it wouldn't be so presumptuous as to jump to an outcome, but I think the political accountability for the decision making is one of the main considerations we're looking at.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just some comments on this, as when we had Mr Walsh here before. Look, I made it clear that I support the status quo because it's working pretty well. The administration fee for that was $300,000 per annum, so that's my view on it. If we were to, the Act itself, how prescriptive is it? I'm thinking if we were to change the application process to make it 3 yearly, as some amenities might see that giving them more operational certainty, would that take an amendment of legislation, or have we, for that example, got the ability within ourselves to say, oh, let's change it 3 yearly instead of yearly, and inflation adjust it per annum?
Well, my view is that change could be made without changing the legislation. I don't think the Act is so prescriptive that would not be possible. So I think by agreement between the parties, we could easily go to a process where there is a 3-year review process, or at least there's certainty going 3 years into the future.
So there's a real possibility that the Act may stay in place, and we as governors may amend some of the process in and around applications and reporting lines.
Yeah, we have no presumption one way or the other about whether that will stay or go. I would say that we'd probably have to get our legal team to have a good look at what we can and can't do within the framework of the existing legislation. I don't seem to be able to go very far in this Act without a team of lawyers with me,
That's
so
right.
I'm sure.
Yeah, is there any mood by Parliament for this for legislative change around the Act? Is there an appetite for that from across
Just in
politics?
terms of political response, the only issue that we've ever had, and the only comment, because we haven't considered this matter or reflected this matter specifically to Parliament, but the Minister of Local Government or Associate Minister of Local Government, Sam Lotawinga, actually reflect the fact that they would be listening to Auckland in terms of any outcomes from this discussion, which I think is a useful position to take. And the outcomes, if they require statutory change on the basis that everyone would agree, and it won't happen without it, then I'm sure the government would be prepared to act on the basis that there was a compelling reason for the change. But look, Councillor Cam, you may be right, but I think it's important to actually get a process and then some reflections on some of the challenges within the present legislation teased out, and some recommendations. Councillor Linda.
Thank you. In the terms of reference, do you think that gives wide enough scope, and has it been considered whether, if you look at the list of 10, and I mean it was put together some time ago, things change, is there any mechanism in the legislation for us to look at it, to look at people floating off and on, given changing times, circumstances that, there may be, is there some way of looking at, is there another organisations that would benefit from being on this process or benefit our processes, or looking at, maybe it's time for someone to move on? Is that in that scope or in the legislation?
Or David, would you?
Yeah, sure. The legislation does cover both of those possibilities for new parties to be introduced to the 10, or parties to be removed from the 10. So that's already in the Act.
Is that something you're going to look at in the review, whether the 10 are the right 10? I mean, I'm not advocating anything. I'm just, how do we ever look at that process? Is that a different process from this?
The review is premised on the fact that the 10 amenities that are currently within the regime will remain within whatever mechanism I think that we recommend. There is a separate process for adding or removing amenities to that process. One of the issues that we have identified from a council perspective in the terms of reference is that whatever funding mechanism we end up recommending provides the flexibility to respond to changing social trends, innovations, and the changing circumstances of the amenity organisation.
That's wide enough. Thank you.
Okay, moved and seconded by Councillor Penny W. Thank you, Penny. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against? Thank you very much, Alistair. Good work. Team, thank you. Great to see you and be seeing you. Keep up the good work out there. Awesome. Okay, item 13. Recommendation from Parks, Recreation, Sports Committee, clarification and decision making on Māngere Maunga. Alright, we have got, who's this one? Chris, yeah, Chris does, but who's this fellow who's with me? John.
Mr. Chairman, we've got Rob Cairns here.
Oh,
This
excellent. Sorry, I
matter
couldn't read
has
that.
been fully considered and I'm happy to move it. It requires the consent of the governing body.
Yep, that's good. And and sorry, Rob, I was struggling to read your name. Rob, welcome. We've got a recommendation. It's moved by the chair and seconded by Councillor Cowell as the deputy. Okay, Rob, technical report. Anything you want to add?
No, I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
Okay, Councillor Chris, is there? Sorry, Chris Fletcher. Chris, is there anything you want to add as a chair before we climb into any further questions?
No, this complies with the requests of the local board. The matters were fully considered at the Parks Committee, and as I say, under delegations, it just requires the consent of the governing body.
Very good. Right, we got Councillor, I've got Councillor Al first, then Councillor Cathy, then Councillor Chris D.
Thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge the local board chair for Māngere o Tāhuhu, Lydia, who's here.
Kia ora, Lydia. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Also the previous chair and local board in regards to this particular issue, and obviously support it fully. The history to King Tawhia's Cottage is an interesting one, Your Worship, as you know, under the Manukau City Council, Legacy Council. Interesting that the late Sophie Muru ended up coming through to see us at Te Puia Marae to get King Tawhia's Cottage moved from the original homestead through to Māngere Mountain. And I also, at this point, want to acknowledge the CEO at the time, Lee Orton, in regards to funding to get this removed to Māngere Mountain. And having King Tawhia's Cottage here at Māngere Mountain, and also with this, with the Parks Committee and now the governing body, look, it's a long time coming, and for me, being part of the King Tawhia's Cottage for many, many years as a councillor in Manukau, and now with the local board, so definitely support that plus the education centre coming through, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Cathy.
It was just to add some words to the end of the recommendation to make it absolutely clear, and the words to add would be, and thus the responsibility of the Māngere o Tāhuhu local board. Because that's why we're doing this, we're giving responsibility over. So it would make it clear, because it is not clear in the resolution as it stands.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm reasonably comfortable with that. Stating the obvious, that's good. I got next Councillor Chris D and then Councillor Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's a question for clarification from the author, the manager of Parks Recreation Policy. I'm along with Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Cashmore, appointed by this group to the Maunga Authority, and of course the Maunga Authority has an interest in contiguous parcels to the various maunga. I guess I want some comfort with this, that we're not stretching out the process unnecessarily in addressing the Maunga Authority's desire to look into the vesting of the administrative responsibility of those contiguous parcels to the maunga to it at some further stage. But if we put, is there any risk of us putting a barrier in the way by actually transferring jurisdiction from the regional entity to the local entity? Is there any barrier then for the Maunga Authority proposals that are yet to come forward, yet to be worked up, for them to be considered at a future date?
The future decision around the potential vesting of these pieces of council land to the Māori Authority has been recognised in all discussions with the local board and the Parks Committee, and acknowledged by the local board as a decision that will be coming. Staff don't believe there's any risk that this decision or any land that's held by the local boards as opposed to the governing body would be treated any differently in that decision making. So the decision to be made by council about whether it vests its land can be made regardless of whether the land is currently allocated to the local body, local board or the governing body.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Linda.
That's sort of answered my question, but I guess then is this going to incur more cost, time, etc., of staff and consultation if we do it this way, the sort of interim step, rather than just waiting to leave it vested as a regional park, then straight to the maunga, if that happens, rather than do this and then eventually go there anyway?
We don't think this would have any impact on the process we would go through to make that decision around vesting to the Māori Authority. We would fully engage with local boards regardless of whether the land was allocated to them or not. So it would have no impact on that process.
Okay, so I understand that, Mr. Chairman. Just though, could it mean that because it's so beloved by that local area, local board advocacy, mean that it couldn't be vested because of opposition? I mean, that's my concern. I'm not saying it shouldn't go there, I'm just saying, could it be that it becomes difficult because it's considered local then?
I think the local board has been very clear about its views on its future role, certainly with the built facilities and the land associated with them. I don't think those views would change depending on this decision today, and those views will come across as we go through the process of discussing the potential vesting to the Māori Authority.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, I've got Councillor Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the recommendation. I recall when the land was acquired and the reason for acquiring that land was to create a linkage between Mangere Mountain and the Amberley Regional Park. Things have changed, perspectives have changed, but in some way, given the comments about how important the maunga is, that we're in effect in some ways downgrading its status. However, I do support the recommendation. I would be totally opposed with the notion that some members seem to be suggesting that council land should be taken over by the Māori Authority. I would be opposed to that. The Māori Authority needs to look after its own land, and the ratepayers of Auckland are paying for that. So that's my position, Mr. Mayor. I support the recommendation, but I would be opposed if there's an end game of it moving from local board control to the Māori Authority, which, when you think about it, is an interesting name for what is really another parks committee. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay. Oh, Councillor Bill.
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, and to Rod, yeah, thank you for the report. The issue of the Māori authorities, it's newly established working in this area, and we will, just as it's a co-joint governance operation, so-called may have to be that way with the local board working. This is uncharted territory to a degree, but what is charted is the fact that we have these co-governance structures that can work collaboratively and effectively, and I'm sure that that sort of structure can be put together to help this work out in a proactive manner that's going to benefit all concerned.
Yep, it's all a part of understanding how to make the amalgamation work. The devil's always in the detail. Yep. And in the tension between all the various parts of the governance model. So there's no manual for this. It's just a slow, sure working out with goodwill. So we have got moved and seconded. Move that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Passed. Okay, well done. Thank you. Item 14. We're going west. John. John Hutton? Is John here? Good man, John. Kia ora and welcome. The Auckland Council submission to the Māori Affairs Committee on Te Kawerau Maki Claims Settlement Bill. Very big for the iwi. So we have got a recommendation there. It is received in hindsight as you were. Councillor George, you want to move?
Yep.
I'm happy to.
Second will be Councillor Benny H. And John, anything you want to alert us to, or should we be blissfully happily for Kawerau Maki?
I think blissfully happily. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good man. Councillor Chris.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is the first time that John has appeared before the governing body, and I would just like to commend him for the work that he's undertaken, and to say that I think as a council we're very privileged to have his experience being brought to the council table on treaty settlement issues. So it's really with pleasure that I see John here today.
Excellent.
I'm happy. Oh, it's moved. That's fine.
It is moved, Councillor Chris. Councillor Ross.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see in the fine point print the marae site that Waitakere indicated or offered, Te Karamaki at Teihanga. Where is that at?
That sits outside of the treaty settlement framework. I understand that that question is really in abeyance. It's not something I have a lot of knowledge about, but I think the resolution, the previous resolution, to make that available still stands, and that'll be a matter for Te Kawerau Maki and Auckland Council to work through.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. How about you, George?
I was just going to answer that
Penny
question.
H.
I was just
Is
going
that
to
done?
comment on that. We're working through that. Te Waka Angamua are doing some excellent work with Te Kawerau Maki, and the Bethel's Tehinga community marae is certainly still under discussion, and as has been explained, it's entirely separate from this treaty settlement issue.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay, now I've got Councillor George. Hang on, just wait, please. So I've got a few. Hang on, Councillor George. Sorry, I just got a few hands floating, so I want to get a batting order here. So I've got Councillor Linda, Councillor Wayne, I think. Did you?
Yes,
Councillor
please.
Wayne? Anyone else who wants to have a go at this? Sorry, Councillor Penny. Okay, so Councillor George first.
Well, this submission, which is set out in the details set out in the report, acknowledges the importance of the settlement to Te Kawerau Maki and the people of Auckland, acknowledges the ongoing relationship between Auckland Council and Te Kawerau Maki, and sets out aspects of the settlement which affects Auckland Council, particularly the development of options at Te Onikiri Tia Point, also known as Bomb Point at Hobsonville, just across from Beach Haven, where I grew up and know this area very well. So this is a significant moving forward in relation to another treaty settlement, and I also thank John for the work that he's doing in his new position. Thank you, Your Worship.
Excellent. Te Onikiri Tia. Bomb Point. Why do they call it Bomb Point, John?
Because it was the bomb.
It's got some bomb shelters there.
It's literally a bomb point.
It certainly was. Built during the Second World War, and a lot of the shelters still stand as significant features in their own right.
So this will test you. Te Onikiri Tia. What does that mean in English?
I wouldn't venture a translation here. It's pretty prosaic, I understand.
Prosaic. That's what we like. Right, next we got Councillor Linda.
Thank you. Can we just clarify? So we're looking to have the Esplanade vested in council?
The Esplanade's already in
Vested in
council
council.
ownership. There's the balance of the point there is under discussion or negotiation presently
between council and the Hobsonville Land Company.
Purchase.
For purchase.
And so, okay, yeah. All right, so just some clarification. My father was the officer commanding of this, what was actually just called bomb dump, when I lived there. And the actual ordinances were blown up there, and he has said he could never sign that off as completely safe. So he was asked to do that, and he said he couldn't. So it's good that it'll be a park, because we don't want anybody building on top of that. But I'm sure it's probably fine, but no one can actually take the risk. That was a significant playground.
Now we're nervous.
So it definitely was. It definitely was.
Just as well no one's filming this.
It's an armourer's playground. So, no, well, it's true. That's the truth. So, and when you say, just to clarify, so the actual land that will be handed over to Te Kawerau Maki will then be handed over to council to keep as one parcel. Is that what you're saying? That's what I'm
Not quite.
trying to
There are two portions of land.
It says here in the clause.
2,800 square metres, so a relatively small portion that will be vested in Te Kawerau Maki through the Treaty Settlement Bill, and that's for the marae. The balance of the point presently is Crown land. There will be a right of first refusal to Te Kawerau Maki for that land, but with a very specific exemption that would allow council to acquire the land for the purpose of a park. If council decides to acquire that land for the purpose of a park, the right of first refusal stays with the land. So at any future date, and we're talking up to 170 years, council decides to divest itself of that park, then Te Kawerau Maki would have the first right to purchase before it was put on the market. It sounds complicated, but it's
like
a
an off-the-bat
standard
process. That's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Wayne?
Sure. I'd just like to acknowledge Te Kawerau Maki. They were one of the early tribes in the Auckland region, and their settlements were extensive from coast to coast. Later tribes came along and now occupy significant parts of their area. So I would hope that the settlement process acknowledges that, and as much and all as there's a settlement over land, is there recognition of their extensive previous settlement of Auckland and the various locations that they occupied, including, for example, Whangapara and other parts of the region?
The Te Kawerau Maki Claims Settlement Bill and the accompanying deed of settlement are pretty extensive on my reading. They include cultural redress through the Waitakaris and across to Tiritiri Matangi Island. There are various statements in the historical account and background section of the deed that acknowledge Te Kawerau Maki's history. So that is borne out in the settlement itself.
Thank you.
Councillor Wayne. Last question to Councillor Penny W.
Yes, thank you very much, John, and I'm sorry we need to catch up about Parakai. The transfer of the Riverhead Forest, has that actually taken place yet?
No, that will take place when the bill itself is passed and by Parliament, and when a date called the settlement date takes place, which tends to be a month or two after royal assent is given.
It's just that I'm just aware that there is some hope from Te Kawerau Maki about some development going on there, maybe a special housing area or something, and having been embroiled in the Tiara issue, and now, of course, as you will be aware, the mining rights in Woodhill, with the closing of the sand mining for our ex-deputy mayor, Mr. Steele, as you'll be aware, Brenda's father-in-law. People haven't sort of realised that sort of detail of some of these settlements, and I just hope that we're not going to end up with any fish hooks.
I couldn't advise on that, except to note that the land would be vested in Te Kawerau Maki subject to the Crown Forest licence that's currently running over it, and that they tend to have a life of about 35 years. So if there was a relationship between Te Kawerau Maki and the licence holder, and they came to some
development agreement to forego aspects of that licence early, that would create a development opportunity for Te Kauaumaki, and obviously that would then evoke all of the usual planning and procedural matters that Auckland Council would be involved in.
It's just that through you, Mr. Mayor, I've sort of heard mumblings of wanting to put some sort of building on that forest, and of course it would be outside the rub at the moment, but I think it was part of the unitary plan discussion, so just be aware of that.
Got it. Well done, Councillor Penny W. No other comments. It's moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
It gets passed. Right, now councillors, I'm going to move into confidence, and then as soon as we've moved and agreed that, I'm going to break for 10 minutes, bearing in mind Councillor Denise's request that we try and have regular breaks during the day. And also it's a timely thing to do that.
What's wrong with you?
So on that basis, I'll move exclusion for all of the purposes set out, and including the BODs who need to stay with us as a consequence. I'll move that. Seconded, Councillor Cowell. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Gets passed. Right, we are now stand adjourned for 10 minutes, cup of coffee, cup of tea, and other breaks.
Tai Chi.